Tuning in from the United States. My name is Chaz Kaiser. I'm the Communications Manager for the West Africa Trade and Investment Hub, an activity funded by the United States Agency for International Development. Thank you so much for joining us. The title for this webinar is Exporting to the US, Keys to Developing a Sales Strategy, Working with Brokers and Buyers, and Getting Export Ready. It is a long title because we have a lot of information for you. And I know there's a lot of excitement for the webinar because 800 people have registered. So we expect a full house. Before we get started, I wanted to go over some housekeeping rules, webinars for all the, housekeeping rules for the webinar. First, for those of you who speak French or just want to practice your French, we have French translation. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there is a little button that says interpretation, looks like a globe. And if you click that, you can go to the French room. And if you'd like to toggle, go back and forth, you are free to do that. So again, if you speak French or want to practice your French, we have French interpretation. Second, please keep your video off, and we have muted everyone, but ensure that you're muted. And second, we're going to save our questions until after the presentation. And we're trusting that there's going to be a lot of questions from the many people who are over West Africa-based businesses. In order for us to answer your questions, we would prefer that you type your questions into the chat box. The best way to do this, if you could, is to put your name, and if you would like to, your company, and then put your question, and then just type it into the chat box. As the presenters are speaking, I will be copying and pasting those, and we will go over those at the end of the presentation. Our presenters are Esther Psarakis and Andy Harvell. They will be introducing themselves, but before that, I would like to introduce Carl Littlejohn, our acting chief of party, and so he'll come on and give a brief welcome. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Bonjour à vous tous. First of all, thank you very much for participating in this webinar. We're really happy to have you on, and we hope that we can answer all of the questions that you may have with regards to AGOA and the exporting possibilities of trading your goods in the United States. For ourselves, the Trade Hub, we fully support the AGOA. We support AGOA and the Prosper Africa initiative that promotes two-way trade and investment between the United States and Africa. The West Africa Trade and Investment Hub, it is a 5-year program. We've just finished year 2. And we're very unique in that we are private sector led. We fully believe that by partnering with the private sector, we can help generate not only regional trade, but also international trade, global trade, notably to the United States and other countries across the globe, by improving the quality of goods hand in hand with the private sector. We do this primarily by partnering with the private sector via our co-investment grants. We currently have 62 co-investment grants with the private sector across the West Africa region that will help generate, we're targeting by the end of the program over $400 million worth of trade, both regionally and to the United States. So we're really fortunate to have our speakers today that'll help guide you in ways to help facilitate, navigate this process to export to the United States. Indeed, it can be complicated to get duty-free status, and we're very happy to build these linkages as well. We do provide one-on-one technical assistance to companies in addition to our co-investment grants. We've already helped over 70 companies build these linkages and trade duty-free to the United States. And we hope we can assist you all as well to kind of get you more familiar with the process and potentially assist you in the future for any one-on-one technical assistance if you qualify. So with that, I'll go ahead and have Chaz introduce a video that explains exactly what AGOA is, gives you an idea of the benefits that AGOA can have for your business to export to the United States. So thank you very much and have a wonderful afternoon.
Have you heard of the AGOA? If you're a business that wants to import African goods to the United States, let me tell you the good news. The African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA, provides the framework for U.S.-African trade. More than 6,500 goods can be exported duty-free from Africa to the United States thanks to the AGOA, saving businesses millions of dollars and making them globally competitive. In this example, we can see that a U.S. importer could save up to $3 per kilo when importing onion powder from Africa, and an import of 20 tons can save up to $60,000 in customs duty. The West Africa Trade and Investment Hub, funded by USAID, has vetted numerous exporters and is ready to assist you with these connections with experienced businesses. Contact us to know more about these exciting opportunities with AGOA.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, just bear with me one.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Just go back. So I'm Esther Psarakis, and I'm actually your senior market linkages expert that's based here in lovely New Jersey in the United States. It's a little cold here. And I want to give you all a warm welcome to all of you who have attended this webinar with us today. And ideally, I and my colleague, Andy Harvell, will present a lot of very useful information for you. I've had the pleasure of being in this role now for about a year, working with Pragma Corporation, and maybe a few of the folks that I've worked with are actually even on this call today. So ideally, the thing is, I also want to state right from the beginning, we have a lot of information that's on these slides and on this deck, and you are getting this presentation, as well as that video that we just saw is embedded in there for your review. Okay, so what makes the US market different? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to backtrack because I want Andy to introduce himself first as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andy Harvell. I am the owner of Harvell Trading and Vendor Services. I've been a buyer, distributor, importer over the last 20 years in the specialty foods industry. In that time, I have found that there needs to be a better system to help educate producers on how to succeed in the United States. And I'm very excited and very glad to have received this opportunity to speak to you all today. I started the company so I could dedicate my time and effort in assisting up-and-coming producers to grow their business and achieve success. Every day is a challenge in the US, and my team and I are focused on analyzing businesses to help you along your journey and make connections and promote your products. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Yes, and actually just a little further to that, I've had the experience of working in a number of countries over the past years, in addition to working with West Africa, and to really help multiple companies get market ready and enter into the United States and really help to navigate towards success. And that's how I've been able to be introduced and work with folks such as Andy and others. And we're going to cover some of the key elements that you need as you go through your process. So what makes the US market different than other markets? There's really a lot of complexity here. Probably a lot of you are already exporting potentially into Africa or into Asia, the Middle East, or Europe. It may not be as complex for you to do that, to be able to get your products into those markets. But to get into the United States, particularly since September 11th, there was a lot of additional regulation that's put into play. So I'm not going to go into all of the details of this for essence of time. And if we have time at the end, we can answer some questions on there. But there are a number of very key restrictions and protocols that must be paid attention to. And the good news is, by working with us through the Trade Hub, we can help you with all of that. So that's where, you know, even for all the complexity, and right now, I think many of you are aware that what's happening in the world is incredible shortages. Container prices have skyrocketed. There's a premium on having great commercial warehouse space available. There's incredible wait times at the ports. You may even have read about how there's days and days of containers waiting to enter into ports, both in New York and particularly in Los Angeles. This is all adding pressure. On the flip side, it does actually give you, in some ways, there's an advantage, and maybe some doors will open and eyes maybe pay more attention than they have in the past to free trade programs such as AGOA, to be able to finally say, you know what, it is so hard to get their products from their traditional providers that now they may finally be open to looking at other sources. So this can be a great window of opportunity for all of you here. And that means you, in your role as the supplier, you've really got to, you know, to use an expression, up your game. You've really got to be paying attention to everything that you need to be able to do to be attractive to working with US buyers. You have to have all of the credentials that are needed. You have to be properly registered. And the good news is, again, and my colleague Cara Diallo is on this call, we can help with things such as the FDA registration, putting you in touch for certain other aspects that have to get done. So again, the FDA requires all register. You have to be protected by an importer under FSMA. You have to show proof of fumigation. I get that all the time when I'm working with potential buyers on cashews, for example. There's a lot of regulations that must be closely adhered to. It's very easy to stumble and actually waste money along these areas, but we're here to help you along that path. This is something you can all do very easily on your own. You really should know what the harmonization codes are for your products. And this really is a global designation for your products. So depending on what you have, be it cashews, cocoa, a finished product, an energy drink you want to get into the United States. And it's more important than ever because it is highly probable that your products are eligible under AGOA to come into the United States tariff-free. And as you saw from that video, and there could be really distinct advantage to you, to the end buyer, to buy from you versus somebody else. We gave the example of onions in the video, but that really, particularly today, when it is so expensive with the containers, that competitive advantage is something you really need to focus on. The other important thing is knowing with your harmonization code, one code may be more advantageous to you than another for certain areas. So the other thing too, I want to talk a little bit about is the role of what a freight forwarder does. They really are your shipping intermediary. They work with the ocean carrier that's going to get your product out of West Africa and to its ultimate destination. In this particular case, we're talking about the United States. And to really help you, if you do not have the background to really understand Incoterms, that's something, another area it's important to understand Incoterms, which is global, to understand what ex works means to a given buyer, or freight on board, or any of the other terms, to be able to quote pricing in the way that the buyer needs it, so they can determine if you're priced competitively, if they can afford to sell your product. Those are all very important things. And that's an area where your freight forwarder can definitely be helping you and assisting you. And it's a very important role. So the role of the importer of record, this is another biggie. Who the heck is going to take your product into the United States? You need to find an importer and somebody who's going to actually be the importer of record. Every product that is brought into the United States has to have somebody who's taking responsibility for it. That's basically it. Who's going to take responsibility for it? So some importers just import it and they will act as your warehouse. Some will import, warehouse, and they want to sell your product. And there's others that will import, warehouse, and have exclusive control over your products. They want exclusivity. There's pros and cons to that, depending on what your product is, because you could be closing a lot of doors if that importer really doesn't have the breadth and depth and financial wherewithal to really sell your product. Another opportunity, and there are a few folks that I've worked with the Trade Hub actually, who are going this route, which is where you actually have your own presence in the United States. You become your own importer of record. You actually, set up a company in the United States, and you're able to control your destiny that way as well. That is something else that can also be considered. Normally, I suggest that down the road, once you have acclimated and gotten used to doing business in the US market. But for those who really have the strategic direction to continue to grow there, that's what you should potentially have as your long-term game plan. And I'm currently working with a couple of companies from the Trade Hub that are doing exactly that. Okay, so again, I just covered this. This goes into a lot of depth, but that relationship with your importer is honestly super critical. It can truly make or break your success. Just as a small antidote in a totally separate project, working with a company based out of Europe, they hired me to find a new importer, particularly during the pandemic. They really couldn't travel. They couldn't figure this out. But the current importer that they had honestly was kind of, I wouldn't say ruining their business, but there wasn't a good relationship. There was erosion of the brand identity and image in the market. And I was basically hired to find a new importer that could revive it and regrow the business that was lost. So that's why having a really trusting relationship and knowing that you have someone who's really watching you and watching your product is very key. Another thing, some of you may already be importing products into the ethnic markets here in the United States and what we call the gray market, and you might be just using your normal labels that you've been able to use in Africa or the Middle East or Asia or where have you. But to be honest, you shouldn't be doing that in the United States. If your container was to be examined and they saw that you don't have proper labeling or at least good proper stickers on top of your labels, they could turn back your product. They could destroy your product. They could fine. And really a good importer is not going to allow that. They're going to be real sticklers to make sure that products are properly labeled. Again, it's really easy for you to find a lot of this information yourselves by looking on the FDA website and getting this. This came right off of the FDA website, very clear cut. However, this is another area where we can really help you through the Trade Hub. we have a labeling expert who's able to work with you to assist you in making sure all your labels are compliant. If things have to be maybe adjusted a little bit, so you then are market ready. So then buyers will pay more attention to you. So I can't stress this enough. It's honestly not worth it. I haven't even had personal experience. I was a direct importer myself. In the past, I used to import a variety of products, and every once in a while I had a supplier who thought they were being, didn't pay attention, didn't take it seriously. And there was a couple of times I had products held up, and one time even destroyed, $40,000 worth of product destroyed because it did not meet the labeling requirements. And it's a couple of iffy ingredients. You've got to take that seriously. The other thing that's really important is you've really got to know your playing field. You have to understand the competitive landscape for your product. And again, in today's environment, because of the internet, I wouldn't say it's really easy to be able to conduct a lot more research than you could in the past. You can get online, just Google your product, see if it's on Amazon. Is it on Walmart.com? Is it on Target.com? What kind of specialty retailers? Would your product be something that you want to sell into manufacturers? Can you look at some wholesale sites, get an idea? There's so many ways that you can get some of this information. I mean, there's nothing better, to be frank, though, to be able to go in person, particularly if you have a product that you want on the shelves of US supermarkets or retail stores, to be able to come and visit here and see for yourself, taste, feel, look. There's nothing that replaces that. And I realize with COVID that hinders that ability right now. But that being said, there's still an awful lot of research that you can do by yourself. And again, working with us with the Trade Hub, I'm able to help direct you. I'm able to help, create that strategic game plan to make sure you could sell your product at a viable price in the US market. Now, Andy and I were chatting about this yesterday as we were going through our slides and what to focus on. And, we almost call this the money slide. This is the big aha, we have a big little gold dollar sign there for a reason. And entering into the United States, and honestly, if any of you have entered into other markets, you may have found this. It is very easy to underestimate the cost and complexity of entering, maintaining, growing your sales and your market share. The other thing is too, you have to understand, you might be a big deal in your home country. You might have a lot of sales in your home country or even surrounding areas, but you know what? That doesn't mean very much necessarily in the United States at all. It's a huge country out here. Yes, there's a lot of potential, but honestly, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of competition. You're an unknown entity. People don't know if you're going to be reliable. Are there going to be any problems with your product? Do you really mean what you say? So understanding how important it is to have people on your side, such as a broker, is really mission critical. And to understand some other things that Andy is going to go into further detail for you. So again, just to stress this, a US sales strategy has a lot of challenges, but there can be really big monetary rewards in the long run. But you've got to be really laying the groundwork properly. You're halfway around the world. You're in a different time zone, so that adds complexity. You have to understand that you need to be able to conduct sales real time in the United States. It's a 9:30 probably now in the United States, and you all are 4 or 5 hours later in the day. If you're doing work in California, add another 3 hours. You'll be working evenings. Understand that that's going to be part of what it takes for success. And so critical. Who is watching the store? Who's on your team? And that's what we're going to talk about. Who's on your team? How do you make sure that your products are properly being cared for, placed, and sold? So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Andy to delve a bit deeper into all of this right now for you.
All right, thank you. So Esther's done a really great job of talking about what it takes to get export ready. Being an importer of European products, she really hit everything that's so critical to talk about. Going over the tariffs and the tax codes can save you a lot of money and a lot of headaches. So it's just really, really great stuff. Thank you, Esther. So I'm going to speak a little bit more about the ins and outs of working with buyers and brokers in the US. We've said a lot, the US is a challenging market, and that's the truth. It is a very challenging market, but you can be successful with the right formula and the right amount of prep work. American buyers are focused on meeting the needs of their customers. And when investing in foreign products, they expect a long-term commitment to your ability to fill orders and meet their demands. And they are a very demanding, American buyers are a very demanding group of people. So going back to Esther talking about the market analysis, it's great to understand all the different type of retailers in the US that you are looking at. And you need to categorize those retailers into where you think your product fits. So it's very important, and I'm going to say this a lot, it's very important to understand what your product is and where it fits in the US. So all the different type of retailers we have, and they're all designed to fill the needs of a specific customer profile. Knowing where you fit in those is going to save you some frustration, and it's going to save you from being turned down from a lot of things. A good example is a specialty store is something where you can go get specialty products and high-end items, but it's not what we call a full shop. You're not going to do your entire grocery shopping at a specialty store. You're going to have to go to a conventional store, but that conventional store may have other products that are similar, but it all goes back to that customer and what they're looking for. So talking about the West African products, the best option to start in the US is ethnic markets and e-commerce. I saw a comment come across about e-commerce, and that couldn't be more accurate. It's easy to get going with that. You don't need distribution. You're not talking to individual buyers and making meetings. You can do the legwork and get onto e-commerce, and you can really do a lot with that. Unique products with a story do well in specialty stores as they look for products that will set them apart. A specialty store is going to be okay with high retail. Their customers are not opposed to spending a lot of money on products, but in return, those specialty retailers are going to want to have products that are unique. They love story. American retailers love a good story. So if your brand and your product comes from a farm, a small town, it's family owned for generations, American buyers, they eat that up. They really do enjoy that because it, again, gives them something to separate themselves from their competitors. Esther also previously mentioned for the more commodity products that are ingredients, manufacturers are a great option.
Mm-hmm.
They buy in large quantities, and they can help you also getting placement with food service distributors. I have a couple friends that own companies that are manufacturing companies. They buy in bulk when they can, but they also buy from just your everyday food service distributors. So getting on with a manufacturer can get you into food service distribution, and that can really help grow your business that way. So just to talk a little bit about some of the different markets, we had one slide, so there was only so many that we could talk about today. But Amazon is the most widely recognized e-commerce retailer in America. I can say that there is an Amazon truck on my street 7 days a week. We have Amazon trucks all the time. Whole Foods, which Amazon owns, largest natural specialty retailer in the US. I was at Whole Foods for 14 years, so I've done a lot of work with them. Their focus is natural, They have a strict ingredient guideline that they follow, and more retailers are moving towards those ingredient guidelines. So understanding when you're looking at market analysis and you're looking at the different retailers you want to target, research whether they have an ingredient standard that they follow. As those get more popular, it's more critical for you to understand where your ingredients fall. I have a friend that is a meat producer. He does cured meats. He recently had to change his ingredients because more retailers were moving away from an ingredient that he had, and it was beginning to limit his ability to sell in the market. So understanding that is essential. ShopRite and Publix, these are conventional grocery stores. They focus on high volume with low prices. The fact is they typically do not get creative with their product selection, and ethnic items are very uncommon. You'll go in, Esther had a tahini on a slide, so I'll just use that as an example. You'll go into a conventional grocery store, they'll have one tahini on the shelf, and
Right.
that's it. If you go to a specialty store, they may have 10 different tahinis on the shelf. So that's where I talk a lot about and really want to emphasize the understanding where your product fits. I've seen a lot of situations and worked with a lot of companies that want to come into the US and they say, all right, I want to go to Walmart. And we talk about it, and it's like Walmart has a private label tahini. They're not going to look at another extension of tahini, and they're not looking to replace their current. So the chances of getting into that retailer for that particular product are slim. Not saying it's not possible, but it's understanding where you go. If you're going to put the effort and the legwork into getting placements, Walmart may not be the best example and best target for your time at this moment. We also have listed TGI Fridays, the Cheesecake Factory, and Panera. These are all fast casual service restaurants, so it's all food service. So to loop back to the manufacturing piece, if you can land a manufacturer and you can get a product into a food service distributor, it opens these channels up much easier, because then they don't have to be the one that takes on the product and takes on the responsibility of having the inventory in the distributor's warehouse. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about packaging and what makes success, what's your requirements for success? What do you need? In 2022, as everyone knows, costs are rising. So what this has done is this is leading to a little bit of a trend, and I'm seeing it with some of my contacts, where high price, high quality items are losing out to lower quality items simply due to a lower cost. So that's just something to remember. That's just, it's another hurdle in the US market that you have to jump over. But let's talk about the three products on the screen. So these are all olives. The first one is a bagged olive. It's clear, you can see the olives, you can see what it is. The product speaks for itself. This is a hang tag package. So it's going to have to hang, which is not a very common merchandising technique in a specialty store, but this is a product that would fit in a specialty store. The canned pearl olives in the middle, they're bright, they're colorful. They're going to go on a grocery shelf, and they're going to have a low retail price. This is a good example of, this is not a product that is going to be the greatest tasting product olive on the market. It's a very good olive. I'm a fan of pearls, but it's not going to be a specialty item. The Mario's pitted snack olives is a grab. They're perfect for the grab and go sets at really a conventional, a specialty, in a convenience store. Because this is something that a customer can pick up, they can open it up, and they can eat it in their car or eat it on their way to wherever they're headed, or eat it at their desk. I can say from my time in retail and doing analytics, retailers love these kind of items because it's an impulse buy. The customer that's buying the marinated olive duo, the bag, that's going to be for a dinner, for a party, for something. But the snack olives are going to be something to snack on. So the trend that we've seen is that the customer will buy the olives that they need for their party, but now they have a craving for olives, but they don't want to eat the ones that they need. So on their way out of the store, they're going to buy the hidden snack olives as just a little snack.
Right. And I think one of the takeaways, and this kind of leads into food trends, is that, look at the products and the ingredients coming out of West Africa and see how you can adapt that. So I know Andy will go a little bit into this, but just, there's a lot of great information out there for food trends to see if what you're doing, maybe with dried fruit, there's a lot of dried fruit that comes out of West Africa. How can you put your own twist on it? Sahali Snacks, for example, has been very, creative in these wonderful combinations of dried fruit and nuts and everything with flavor profiles that are reminiscent of different parts of the world, for example. So, Andy, and what would you like to add to this here?
Yeah, so the U.S. food scene is evolving and trends are constantly changing. It's such a unique market. I lived in Denver, Colorado for 13 years, and Boulder, Colorado was about a 40-minute drive. So these two cities had a completely different food scene, and they would play off of each other. There would be trends in Boulder that were not popular in Denver. So understanding how it evolves and how it changes, because the United States it's a massive market. As Esther was saying, East Coast to West Coast is 3 hours different. So knowing those and doing the research, Mintel is a good market research company to look up. They identify new and upcoming Two, they're focusing on trend setting ingredients. So moringa, turmeric, and hibiscus. It's also important to understand that I've worked at where they've gotten on board with the trend after the fact. And then when you're on the downside of the trend, it's not a recipe for success.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Moving on to private label. Private label is a great area of opportunity in the US. As the number of retailers grows, and there are a lot of them out there, they have to find ways to set themselves apart, and they do that with private label. The advantage of private label is the costs are typically lower, and they don't ask for deep discounts or promotions from you, the producer. A lot of producers really like that because then it's simple, it's straightforward. You understand the cost of doing business with that retailer more than you would putting a branded product. However, the disadvantage of private label is your brand doesn't gain any recognition of being sold at that particular retailer. I've seen that in a lot of different situations where companies start out with a lot of private label and then they want to move into their own brand, but then nobody knows who their brand is. So it makes it more challenging. So that's something that you need to weigh when you're talking about private label versus branded. Is private label is a great option, but if you really want to focus on your brand, then you need to make sure you're pushing your brand. Esther, I believe you had something you wanted to add to this.
I had to tell you this from, conversation, I'm your market linkages person, and I'm trying to create, or I do create the linkages between the companies in West Africa. The Trade Hub helps you get market ready. If you need FDA, if you need to get kosher certified, we have resources. You have to work on your labels. We have resources that can help you do that. So I'll be have a lot of time to be able to waste their time for me to pitch products or ingredients that don't have what they need to be able to say yes. And this is distinctive of price. This is, with the expectation that your price is going to be competitive. But they really need particularly they've never done business out of West Africa. They really need that third-party validation that you have HACCP, or BRC, that a third-party entity is saying that you do things in a proper, structured, clean manner. There's a number of buyers who will not buy a product unless it's kosher certified, because every ingredient has to be kosher certified to go into a product that has kosher certification. If you that could be a great differentiator for you, but you have to make sure that you have it, so you have that certification. So from my perspective, this is one of the very first areas that we focus on, because I need you to have these things to be able to have a buyer at least pay a baseline of attention. I want to say, I am a bit late to first get into the United States, because you're going to learn a lot from that process, and you are going to have a baseline of business, under the United, how that private or books out there. So you can take all those lessons learned. So in a sense, there's an expression, learning on their dime. You can take all those lessons learned and use that to leverage your brand, because already you have a base of business. It's the same thing when I'm dealing with some of you that have some ethnic business in the United States. You have a base of business. That's a really great way, a foundation. And then you're learning what needs to be done for you to be able to cut through all the competition for your brand, which will take a bunch of money and investment.
All right. So for the background, I want to talk a little bit about retail pricing. And this model is very simple, but this is not a simple topic, and it's very good for you to understand when approaching and talking to American buyers on how they view this. So as a buyer, one of my first questions is, what is your suggested retail price? So you need to understand and know what your product should be priced at. And that goes back again to the market analysis. How does your product line up, and how much should it be cost compared to the competing products? From there, buyers back into the cost from the retail to determine right out of the bat if you're going to be a competitive retail price or not. I've made a lot of decisions with products in my years by just asking, what's your suggested retail price? And then determining that looking at their cost, I cannot make it work. So I move on. At my last company, we had a target margin of 50%. So to walk you through this, if a competitive retail price of an item is $9.99, the most I would pay as a retailer was $4.99. That $4.99 has to include the cost of distribution. So if my distributor charges me 20%, the most the distributor would pay you for the product is $3.99. Esther's going to talk shortly a little bit more about that distributor charge, but it's a good way to understand. So if the target's 50%, the most you can probably sell it to the first stop in the supply chain is $3.99. Esther, is there anything you want to add on this particular slide?
I think the only thing I'd say is it's always eye-opening and often shocking how little you actually can sell your product to, and I'll cover that a little bit more, and then what it ends up being on the shelf, if you're going through all these channels, and just understanding how many other hands are in the pot, so to speak, how many other players are involved in that. And that kind of plays into this as well.
So promotional activity. All retailers and distributors that you work with are going to ask you for promotions throughout the year. If they
Mhm.
don't ask you for promotions, then they're going to ask for what they call net. So just the lowest price you can possibly offer to them, and then they're not going to ask for promotions. However, you need to include promotional expenses in your costs. So promotions vary by retailer and by distributor, but a good general starting point is 20% off 4 times per year. You'll want to seek guidance on promotions to offer from the brokers or importers that you work with. Esther's talked a lot about importers. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about brokers here in a moment. They have the direct experience with each retailer and will tell you what is expected. I've worked at retailers that asked for no promotions, and then I've worked for retailers that have asked for tons of promotions. It just all depends. At my last company that I was a buyer for, we had 160 stores. All new items were expected to provide 1 case of each SKU to every store at no charge. We refer to this as free fill. On top of that, we asked for demo support and a quarterly promotion. So if you take all that into account, the first year of your sales with a new large retailer can cost you up to 30% of your total sales dollars. So landing a large account and a large retailer is going to be expensive, and it's good to understand that right out of the gate. I'm a realist. I want to make sure people understand that. Esther, did you want to speak to something about promotion on the shelf?
Well, I think the main thing I want to say is when you walk into a grocery store, I don't know if at least here in the United States, and you see there's a product that's, maybe it's normally $4.99 and there's $1 off buy now. That's who's paying that is you, the manufacturer. That's actually what's charged back. It's called the manufacturer's chargeback. It's charged back to you. So think about it. You may be actually, even though that product is $4.99 on the shelf, your price to the distributor who then has to get it to the retailer. I mean, you may just be getting $2 for that. And then you've got $1 off coupon, so you're getting $1. So this is where it's really important to understand your cost of goods and to do, again, what's called a break-even analysis to kind of understand how aggressive you can be on that, and and how you would then break even based on the amount of sales that you would need to achieve. Again, we could do a whole presentation if there's interest just on how promotions work in the United States, and ideally save you some headache and pain points financially.
All right. So this is an important one too. I mean, so much of this is so important, but this one is something really to take note on. Knowing how to speak to a buyer is critical to your success. Buyers are very different, and each retailer has its own style of conducting business. I've worked for retailers that are very demanding and will ask for everything they can get from you and will be tough. I mean, they're gonna push you because they're out for their bottom line and they want to make sure they offer the best product to their customers and they can make the most money off of it. But I've also purchased for retailers that are invested in the success of their business partners, and they'll work with you through challenges to help you grow new and upcoming brands. Clear, timely communication will let them know that you're working with them, and then make them look like a hero for choosing your brand. That is a fact. Buyers like to be made to feel like they're special, like they're the hero, that they brought your product in, so that makes them the star of the day at their retailer. You can do your research on buyers that you are presenting to, and as a former buyer, I could not suggest that more. Brokers and sales reps for other companies will talk to you about other buyers. I am as a buyer, but I'm sure the sales reps that I've worked with in the past can tell you what their opinion of me as a buyer is. I also, in somebody that's been in sales, I can can speak about between them. And everybody will share this information with you because people in the US, they really are out to help everybody grow, especially in the Cape. So let's go into a little bit more detail. They're your boots on the ground. That's really the best way to put it. That's a term that we use here. They guide you through each retailer, each distributor, and each sales presentation. They're a great resource because they can connect you to their network. So if you find a good broker that fits your product, they can immediately get you connected with 20, 30, 40 retailers, 7, 8 distributors. I mean, it can grow your business very quickly. But it is important to understand that there is a cost of doing business with brokers, and that is unique to certain brokers. So when you're meeting and interviewing brokers, that's something that you're going to want to talk about. In addition to guiding you through the selling process, they stay on top of critical timelines, and they'll help you develop and create effective sales plans for your products. They'll give you the feedback before you present to a particular retailer on your packaging. They may say this retailer may not like this kind of packaging, or the wording on this might not work. They're very helpful. Moving on.
One thing I want to add here, calendar reviews, because that is something people don't fully understand. Because brokers, buyers are so busy, they often will just look at a given product at a given time once a year, as they're then planning what goes on their shelves. So for example, the coffee review or the coconut oil review, when they're looking at vegetable oils, that may happen once a year. Let's say it's March, but you've got to plan for that like the December of the year before to start being ready for it. And if you miss that window of opportunity, that broker is not going to pay any attention to you or your product until another year goes by. That's, particularly with larger buyers with larger retailers. So that's something very important to keep in mind as well. And a good broker knows that.
So Esther talked about earlier when we were talking about importer of record, about how a good one really help you. The importer I was working with was approached by a European company. They needed help. The importer they were with wanted full exclusive. They weren't communicating. They weren't passing on information. They weren't giving promos to their customers. So it put that company 2 years behind in their sales goals. They came to us asking for help. Once we talked to them, what their product was fit with what we were doing really well. And we were able to target the right customers. Most importantly, what we were able to do was we were able to lower their cost because we knew more about their product, reviewed all their paperwork, and we saw their tariff codes that they had. They were bringing the product in under the wrong code. So we were able to get it switched. We were able to save them money. We were able to lower their costs. And we grew their business and almost got them back up to where their goal was. Finding a broker is not easy, and it's going to take time. Make sure you interview brokers and you understand what their market is, who they talk to, and how they, again, are all different. And I have worked with brokers that are great at selling, but are not good at working in store and keeping up with products, and then vice versa. But there are a lot of brokers out there that are fantastic at doing it all. It's just, you have to find them and you have to interview them and you have to go with the company that feels right to you. So talking a little bit about distributors. Distributors are what are going to move your product across the US. The US is a very large country and it spans a lot of distance between the East Coast and West Coast. There's hundreds of distributors in the US and they all specialize in certain products, making it a challenge to find the right one for you. Again, we'll talk about brokers again. This is where they are great. They can help you. When you think about a distributor, it comes across that it's like, all right, this is an easy opportunity for me to get into a retail outlet. So I want to target distributors. It's not always the case. Distributors' catalogs are curated and built by the customers they serve. They will source their own items at times. However, it's usually to replace an existing item in their catalog or to compete with another distributor's catalog. As a retailer and as a salesperson, I know for a fact that if I have a new product that I want to get into a distributor, I actually don't want to talk to the distributor first. I need to talk to their customers because I need to get products in front of their customers. So they have 5 customers go to them and say, hey, we want this product. And then I have that opportunity to go speak to the distributor. So
You know what Andy was saying too, the distributor wants to see that you have customers. And what are the points of distribution that you bring to them to make it worth their while, to have their precious space, warehouse space and everything, and their staff devoted to your product. So just so you understand, a lot of times people have a heart attack when they see how much margin is added on by a distributor. And, you know, the average, distributor is putting anywhere from 25 to 30, sometimes even higher % margin on top of the price that you're paying or that you sell it to them. So these are just some of the various, when you break it down, these are some of the various categories or how it is distributed. Honestly, just a smaller percentage goes to the actual warehousing cost. Somebody has to watch over your account. There's an account executive management. They have a sales force. They have to be paid a commission for any of their internal efforts. The folks that are basically internal warehouse staff, the pack out people, they're putting stuff onto your pallets to get shipped out. Understanding working with their customers when they're resetting their shelves. This is what's called a planogram. Again, we could do a whole class just on this. And I know Andy's had years of experience with this, but it basically is a visualization picture of where products are placed on a given shelf. And there's a lot of strategy and analysis that goes into that. Drayage to stores, the actual shipping and getting it out there. And always, there's going to be some damage, some returns, bottles break, bags open. And last but not least, the vehicles, the trucks to get it there, the buildings, the insurance, the actual staff. So it all adds up.
All right. So I'm going to wrap up my portion and then pass it on to Esther to take it home. Brokers and distributors really impact your business, and you need to consider a lot of different factors. Is your product dry? Is it refrigerated? Is it frozen? Do you have a long shelf life, a short shelf life? Are you targeting customers on the East Coast or the West Coast? They are both entirely different markets and require different strategy and different pricing. All your success is going to depend on the level of detail you go into with your market analysis before you begin exporting to the US. The differences from what I've seen in companies that succeed and fail when importing to the US always comes down to how much prep work they do and understanding there with operable as simple as a nutrition label, like Esther has talked about. I've seen companies come in, they want to target a very specific type of retailer, but that is not the retailer for them. They won't adjust, and then they don't ultimately make it. So understand where your product fits in the US, really work on the brokers, take the proper steps to prepare, and you'll have success exporting into the United States and growing your business.
So what we covered today in this very, intense presentation is all of these steps that are outlined here on this slide. There you are at the top. You're the manufacturer, you're the creator, you're the supplier, and most likely your road to distribution. These are the different roads, as you can see, broken out to how you get to where? The end consumer, the end consumer. So for you being in West Africa, and this is international coming into the United States, most likely you're going to be following the route that's all the way with the most little boxes. So the most hands touching everything before it gets to your end consumer. You know, getting the containers, finding the importer, it's got to go through your importer, to the distributor, to the retailer on the shelf, to the end consumers. Sometimes you can bypass some of this, and this is where it's going from your importer into, you know, a mass drug like a Costco or something like this. It's going from your importer to sell onto Amazon. So the other thing I want to say is, again, you know, working with the trade help you. We all have Amazon. People think, oh, I can just put my stuff up on Amazon, but there's an investment to go on Amazon if you really want to have your product sell there. But I really feel that, you know, today, the level of, you know, customization, uniqueness, we are working now with a company with the Trade Hub that honestly, I think she has a product in her company, just given the current market in the United States. She has a lot of potential to sell throughout America with her product, and she can have that platform using Amazon. But without a company that knows how to get the rankings and knows the time and energy. So, so again, these are, we just briefly touched upon all of this. This information is going to be provided to you as a takeaway. And again, I just want to say, you know, in closing, and then we're going to open up the floor to your Q&As, is I've really had the pleasure, it's been about a year now, that I came, a little over a year, I came on board. You know, I have my own consultancy, Foodpreneur, and I'm working with Pragma Corporation as the senior market linkages expert, and working very closely with a number of colleagues in the West Africa trade hubs, such as Cara Diallo, you know, finding you guys out there that really have the heart, the commitment, the drive, and the desire to bring your products into the United States and to help make those linkages for you. It's a two-way street. We were committed to your success and to helping you provide the resources and knowledge that you need to be able to make your mark here in the US market and to grow for the future. So I really want to thank you personally to date for all the time, and it's been very rewarding working with some of you probably are on this webinar, and I look forward to working with others and to help you succeed in the US market. Chaz, do we want to open out to questions?
We will. Thank you, Esther, and thank you, Andy, for that wonderful presentation. It was jam-packed, just like the title suggested it would be. You delivered. We have a long, so I'm going through the comments now. But I wanted to see, Esther, before we do question and answer, if you could just again share some of the services that the AGOA team offers through the Trade Hub.
Sure. And my colleague Kara's on too, if he wants to chime in. So basically, with the Trade Hub, our goal is to help you get market ready for entry into the United States. So there's actually a form that you fill out so we can assess your readiness. If you're at a stage where we can help you step up, right? Sometimes we're going to tell you, no, there's too many, you're not ready yet. But for those of you that are kind of close, we're gonna do all that we can to help you. So put you in touch, help you with your FDA registration. If you haven't done HACCP certification, tell you you've got to do the HACCP certification. If you technically could have products that are organic, direct you that you should be getting your product certified organic. That can require a lot of work, because that ultimately goes back to the farmers and the small shareholders where you source your products from. Kosher certification. We now have a program we're putting in place. We just had the first one done, and we're looking to do a number of them first quarter, because again, with many food products, it's a door, the door is closed if you do not have at least HACCP certification or BRC. If your products are not kosher, the buyers will not even look at you. So we'll help you with all of that. The other thing too is to make sure that you've got, do you have the fumigation reports? Do you have spec sheets? Are things translated properly from French into English? A number of you that I'm working with, everything's in French, and maybe I can figure it out, but the buyer's not going to have any patience for you. So we need to have everything the way we need to put it on a platter. We need to have it ready. So to do that. And then I personally then need you to be really responsive to me. So if I'm asking for samples, you've got to send me samples so I can send things to potential buyers. If I need you to work on your pricing and I tell you it's not competitive enough to really sharpen your pencil, I need you to be really responsive, because the relationships that I have, people like Andy's like gold to me. I'm serious. He knows his business. He knows his stuff. I don't want to irritate him by bringing him opportunities to evaluate, and the folks from the company from the Trade Hub hasn't done all that they need to do to be ready for that success, because it takes a lot of work. It could take, it does not happen overnight. So we'll help you with that. We'll coach you with that. Help working on sell sheets. How do you present your products, your company? We can critique it. You don't have FDA registration. That's another thing that you must have. Kara can help you get registered. So there's a number of things we can help you do, but equally it's a partnership, and you need to take it seriously and do what's needed to have the success.
Okay, thank you, Esther. And could you please tell all the listeners how much your services cost? Which we know is.
You're very lucky.
Yes.
As long as I'm part of the Trade Hub, it's a big fat zero. But you have to join the Trade Hub, and you have to do the form, and you have to pay attention to what I ask you to do.
Yes. So
I'll be blunt.
Yes,
Me and Kara asked you to do. So,
right, so
yeah.
All right. So just to reiterate, the services offered through the AGOA team and the Trade Hub are free. We are funded through the United States Agency for International Development. And so you really should take advantage of the AGOA services. And as Esther said, come correctly with all the information that she needs and that Kara needs to help you. Let me go ahead and ask a couple of direct questions. Most of the questions Esther and Andy had to deal with just the types of services, and I think you covered that well. Let me ask a few specific ones. Someone would like to know if you are able to assist people in Central Africa, Congo, or is it just for West Africa-based businesses?
I don't actually know if I can answer that. I think, first of all, you'd have to ask the Trade Hub if they'd be willing to take on your company. I mean, I work with whoever the Trade Hub has vetted out for me to help try to work with and create the market linkages leading to sales and relationships here in the United States.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm independent. I'm participating in this, but as an independent.
Oh, true.
It's something that I can potentially look at. So it's something we could look at.
Okay.
Yeah, that's That's correct. Andy could work independently. If
Okay.
there's a company out there, that's a, if they're not, I don't know, we may have people from totally different parts of Africa, and I'm not sure. But yes, Andy can definitely work with them independently.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we do. We have people from throughout West Africa and Central Africa and East Africa on the call, selling everything from dried catfish, flowers, spices, and organic cosmetics to pet food and Afrocentric children. After this call, people have taken the opportunity to share their business information. We will not be sharing information from the chat with everyone. So if you see a company of interest, I advise you to go ahead and copy and paste that information. Also, I wanted to note that we will absolutely be sharing a copy of the PowerPoint, and we will be sharing the video, but we can only do that if we have your email address. If you would have signed up if you would have signed up for the webinar already. And so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the link again. If you have not done so, you need to sign up for the webinar, and that way we will officially have your email address. We won't actually copy and paste all the email addresses from the chat. Kara Darlo, who is with our AGOA team, has been listening in the French room. Kara, can you share any questions, or do you want to add anything about AGOA services?
Thank you very much, Andy and Esther, for this great presentation. I am seeing a lot of questions as well. So let me ask you some of the main questions I am seeing here. And how to make a presentation to a buyer. So before you answer to these questions, I know Esther has mentioned the fact that the Trade Hub services are free of charge. And I just wanted to add that for the market linkages services, we are looking for export-ready businesses. Because of the experience we have now, we know what kind of companies can make it through and the kind of companies that are not ready. It's for that reason that companies looking for assistance in terms of market linkages need to register first via the Trade Hub website. When you go on the AGOA page, you will see the AGOA promotion program where you will be able to fill a form and send it to us. There is a program statement there with all the eligibility criteria, and you will be able to, let's say, assess yourself and know if you are export ready for the US market or not. In case you think you are, then we are happy to receive your filled form, which we consider as an expression of interest, and then we will get back to you based on our findings, and then request for more document or for more information so that Esther will be able to do her job in the US market. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Kara. To the first question, some of the ways you can try to vet out an importer, there's a service called Dun & Bradstreet that gives basically background checks and information on corporations. This is particularly more for larger size. That's one way. Another way, I've actually been using a database. There's a few out there. I'm using one called Panjiva, and I actually can go in and try to get a sense when I'm dealing with, I'm trying to find you credible buyers and importers and brokers. So that's one of the ways I'm looking to see if they really do what they say. Are they really importing from given countries and all that? So it does take some due diligence to do that. You know, it's maybe, you know, reaching out to them on LinkedIn. There's a variety of ways. I mean, I think in some ways it's a little bit easier to get that information than it's been in the past because of how much is now on the internet. And so I hope that you know, partially answers your question. The other thing too, I mean, if they have a website, I would even reach out to some of the other products that they import and ask if you can have a frank discussion and see if they like working with that importer. If you're a product that doesn't compete with them, you know, then do that. That can give you a wealth of knowledge. You can find out right from the get-go, do they really promote their products? Do they pay timely or do they stretch out the payments? So, so that would be the other thing I would actually do. And honestly, that's partly how I found a new importer for the project that I was on. I had to find a new importer this past year for something else. And you know, I did exactly that. And it took a bunch of legwork. And again, it's like a marriage. Hopefully it's going to work out, but sometimes marriages don't work out. So, but it's a very important relationship that between, you know, who's your importer of record. And Andy, I
Esther-
think you had the second question.
Yeah, can you repeat the second question? There was just a lot. Well, I just want to make sure that I've got it clear. There was a lot after the question, so I just want to make sure I understand.
Sure. Second question is how to get access to brokers.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, just like what Esther said, it's talking to people, it's doing research. You know, food is definitely my background. So, you know, going onto Google and just doing a quick search of food brokers, or if you have if you have Whole Foods, I use Whole Foods as an example. If you're interested in going after Whole Foods, you know, a Google search of Whole Foods brokers, food brokers, it can find you information because there are a lot of companies that are exclusive to specific retailers. It's also people like me and Esther, you know, reach out and say, hey, do you have a broker that you would recommend? We're kind of, a way to put it would be your first line of defense. So we'll take a look at your product, kind of figure it out, talk to you about where you want to go, and then help you source from there. It is a lot of legwork, but you know, one thing I've learned in all my years of purchasing and selling and buying is people are willing to help. So asking somebody if they have a connection to this, if they don't, then they almost always know somebody that does have a connection to somebody who may have a connection. So you might go pretty far down the rabbit hole, but usually you can find what you're looking for. And then I'm going to repeat too what Esther said, as far as it's like a marriage. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Esther, I would ask, I know firsthand that you've had just some great successes, you and Cara, in creating market linkages for West Africa-based businesses and U.S. companies. Can you share information on the awesome work you and Cara did with Blue Star Direct? Just share the story.
Sure. Okay. You know, one of the things I have to do in this role is find buyers. And although I have tons of contacts from my years in the food industry and through my company Foodpreneur and being a direct importer myself and creator of products, I will tell you, it's been a learning curve for me too, to learn to find buyers, for example, for cashews, for cocoa, for all sorts of things, sesame seeds, which I had not done in the past. So what do? Good old research, cold calling, analysis, using databases to find who is importing into the United States those items now. And I'm literally cold calling them. And I'm like, hi, I'm Esther Psarakis with the West Africa Trade Hub, and I want to introduce you to some wonderful companies out of West Africa. And sometimes people are scratching their head. I'm like, who are you? And then others are open to it. And there a conversation starts. And frankly, Blue Star was a cold call. I saw that he's in New Jersey and that he was importing cashews already out of India and Vietnam, and I think out of Brazil, every place except West Africa. He had once looked at doing that, but had a very bad experience and honestly bad taste in his mouth, and wasn't really open to it. But I realized, again, it's a little psychological too. What I have to do is really get to the heart of, like, where are their pain points? Particularly now in the time of COVID. In some ways it's been harder to get a hold of people or open up their minds. In some ways it's been easier. But he was open to new supply and he was eager to grow his business. So that's the other side of it. It was a buyer who was, willing to open his eyes to the possibility of West Africa and eager to learn and grow his business, to the point where then Swaroop, who's the principal, he went to Cote d'Ivoire. He was very concerned. That was the other thing. He was very concerned with making sure that what he got was really what he was getting, and to be able to see firsthand the facility. So Kara arranged a visit. He came to Cote d'Ivoire and he actually went to Sita, which is where he got his first batch of cashews. He met with Foods Co., another producer out of Cote d'Ivoire, and he has ordered containers of cashews from both of them. And I've been to his warehouse in New Jersey. I tell you, it was personally really thrilling, from that cold call to know that he went there, he ordered containers, and then I go into his warehouse and I actually see the cashews, from West Africa, from those two companies in his warehouse. It was really personally exhilarating to see that success. And I want to do a lot more of that for all of you out there. So, and then he was open to going to Benin, and then Kara and he went and visited other producers in Benin. And now he is signed on and will be getting multiple containers, ideally from another company, ANI, out of there. And now we're in talks about other things. I'm working very closely now with a whole cadre of buyers, but it takes a lot. And honestly, I have to tell you, it takes a lot from your side too. You've got to be able to do what I'm asking of you, what Kara is asking of you, to be able to make that connection and get those sales, And so I'm looking forward to having, we're close to having a couple other deals signed with some other companies, but it's definitely a delicate, it's a dance, it's a negotiation, it's a collaboration, and you have to look at this as a partnership. These buyers don't want to have problems. They want to know they have steady supply, that you are reliable, that what you're putting in that container is what is promised to them, that your fumigation reports are accurate, whatever it is. So, I mean, that's one success story I'm harping on, but I'm telling you, that came from a phone call, and now it's hundreds of thousands, a few $1 million worth of business ultimately that'll be coming out of that one client, out of the West Africa Trade Hub in this project. And I look forward to helping you create, millions more to come out of there. And it's a partnership though, and that's what I want to stress.
All right, we're gonna close out. I'm gonna put you and Andy on the spot though with a trick question. You talked about how the partnership is like a marriage, and we all know marriage is hard. So what 3 qualities do you think these West Africa-based businesses need to have, or the West Africa-based businesses, the CEOs, in order to be successful in exports?
I'd say, for me, I would say flexibility is number one. Be ready to be willing to adapt and to change. If a buyer is giving you feedback on your packaging or on translation, I mean, that's something that happens a lot. Don't take offense to it. It is not anything, it's not anything personal. They're looking for packaging that fits and makes sense to their particular consumer. I would say that would be my first one. Esther?
Okay, I'm in agreement with you on that. I think they also have to be coached. I mean, they're the head of the company, but you know what? They have to be able to be coachable and have humility that they don't know everything. They don't. Nobody does. I'm learning so much every day in this job and in all walks of my life. So you've got to be open to coaching, humility, and guess what? Be open to hiring others on your team that can fill in the knowledge gaps, the technical gaps that you do not have. So because you can't do it by yourself. You need a great team and understand the importance of the people who are part of your company and recognize them and understand that sometimes some of the best ideas, cost-effective ideas and something like this may come from somebody that's down on that production line. So you've got to be really open-minded to that growth. And I think you also have to have a lot of passion and be scrappy. And I think you also have to really pay attention to your numbers and the financials. I do a lot of work here in the United States with small business development centers and work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and they have a lot of passion and desire, but they may not understand the financial cost of things or what it's going to take to grow. And again, I say be open to that, really understand your financials, look at all venues where you might be able to get loans or grants to help as well. So those are some, I mean, I could go on, but those are a few things I'm thinking.
That was
Anything
quite
else?
more than three in all the qualities. people needed to hear. So, well, thank you so much, Esther and Andy, for facilitating just a really jam-packed with information webinar. Again, if you would like to receive a copy of the PowerPoint and the webinar recording, you will have had to have signed up for this presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. Okay, I put it in the chat box again. You will have had to have signed up so we can receive your official email. All right. Thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this webinar and get ready to export or export more. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.